It's time for Chai and Chat. Chai and Chat.
Hey Sundari, how you doing?
Hi, Ranjit. Back on our Chai and Chat. My chai is here.
Chai and chat, yes. And one of the things we were talking about last time was about sort of teenage years and growing up. And we thought about growing up and what does that mean to us? And, when do you grow up? And I mean, you had some interesting ideas that, we'll share today. Again, should we start with a poem, which will
Yes,
hopefully get me thinking of ideas as well? So,
yes. I mean, the poem is a little left field. I don't know whether I picked the poet first or picked the title.
okay.
There were lots of poems about growing up, but I don't know, this one sort of chimed with me. Possibly it's a poem because it's by Maya Angelou. And it's a children's poem, but it's not meant to be a children's poem. It just uses the child's voice. So I'll read it first, and then we can perhaps discuss it, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, great.
It's called Life Doesn't Frighten Me. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghosts in a cloud. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old Mother Goose, lions on the loose. They don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathing fire on my counterpane. That doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them go shoo. I make fun. Way they run, I won't cry, so they fly. I just smile, they go wild. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Tough guys fight, all alone in the night. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Panthers in the park, strangers in the dark. No, they don't frighten me at all. That new classroom where boys all pull my hair. Kissy little girls with their hair in curls. They don't frighten me at all. Don't show me frogs and snakes and listen for my scream. If I'm afraid, it's only in my dreams. I've got a magic charm that I keep up my sleeve. I can walk the ocean floor and never have to breathe. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Not at all. Not at all. Life doesn't frighten me at all. And the reason I chose this is, I think she's written it, with this child's voice to articulate resilience against perceived dragons and fearlessness. So
Yeah.
that idea of when you're growing up, does it mean you're not frightened anymore? Or does growing up mean something else?
Yeah, I quite like the way they're sort of it's that self-talk and confidence. It's like almost like they're saying, the panthers in the park, the strangers in the dark or something. I can't remember those. And it's almost like you hear children do this and they're frightened because you can see it in their face. But they're like, I'm not
Yes.
frightened. I'm not, and I think we've all done that. Whereas we try and self-talk and there's the tell, isn't there, that, in your face you can tell if you're frightened or not. But yeah, going back to
Yeah.
that thing of that confidence, self-talk, and are we ever not frightened of things? And I think that's the interesting thing. I was reflecting on things that I was frightened about, which I probably still am, So
Yeah.
what about you? What sort of things resonate for you in that poem?
Right. I think of that idea, when I was reading it, obviously I've read it a few times at all, that idea of fearlessness and bravado. When you're a child, it's so obvious. And as we grow up, is it still exist, but we're just more sophisticated in the
Yeah.
way we portray our bravado? And the idea of being, when we're grown up, what does grown up mean? Does that mean you're not frightened? Are you just better equipped to deal with fear? Or does grown up mean you're paying the bills,
Yeah.
doing the shopping and the cooking,
Mm.
fitting into society? So it brought to me about that not being frightened with being grown up and what does actually grown up mean, you see. So because of one thing, there were certain things that happened in childhood that I should have been frightened about. In Malaysia in 1969, we had civil unrest. It was a state of emergency in our country. And I wasn't frightened because I knew there were grown-ups, my dad and my mom and grandmother. So you're not frightened. But if that happened to me now, I possibly would be frightened because I'm the grown-up.
When
There's
you were
nowhere else to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying when you're in the car and the police would come and they would search the car, and that to me would be frightening, and because we were always scared of the police or anything in authority. But you were like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just matter of fact, that's what happened. For me, being younger, I wasn't frightened of things. I was frightened of the dark, so things like
Yeah.
that. frightened of those sort of things and
Yes, checking under
monsters.
the bed for ghosts and
Yeah,
dragons.
monsters, things like that, in
Yeah,
cupboards and, at night and, things like
of
that.
course.
But the other things you're not frightened about. But I think when you grow older, you become frightened of the real things in life. So I think for me, that's what I found. And I remember going through my sort of late teens, early 20s, becoming not frightened, but more conscious of places, situations that would give me, I guess, anxiety, which I'd see as being frightened. So I would consciously avoid places. And I'm going to talk about something that was a strategy I used to get myself over this, which was an epiphany for me.
All
But
right.
did you find that as well? Did you find that when you were late teens, early 20s, you were sort of, as you're becoming more aware, were things like, oh, I don't want to go there, or I don't want to be here? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
No, I think you're explaining it. I had a lot of bravado. I did
Mm,
put up a good act, and then I believed my act. So I'm interested for you to tell me your story, because then,
yeah.
I could see where that takes us, really.
And I think it comes down to our different cultural backgrounds and where we, experienced growing up. So for me, as I said, previously it was in the West Midlands in the UK and living in an environment which was very white and being Asian and experiencing those sort of, name calling,
Mm,
little acts as well, like exclusionary acts. So, if you're in a
mm,
supermarket or a shop and not being served first, somebody else gets served before you. Those sort of things that
mm,
at the time
mm.
you can't quite articulate it, you don't quite challenge it.
Yes.
And I think for me, I got this feeling of in certain places I didn't belong. So I avoided
Mm,
those places. I think I also I sort of there was two things that happened that were very, very positive, and I wanted to share those with you and everyone else,
Oh,
really.
yes,
So
please.
one was a book that I read by Susan Jeffers. I don't know if you've heard of this, and
No, I don't know her.
it's
No.
called Feel the Fear, but Do It Anyway.
Okay, that sounds like a very good
Yeah.
motto.
And the
Yes.
book is actually, when you read the book, I don't read many books. I shouldn't tell people this because I'm a writer for stage and screen, but I don't read much. It sounds terrible. I like to watch plays and films and things, but yeah,
Hmm.
but reading is a different thing. So, but I read this book from cover to cover, and it's just like stories, and she gives examples of people I think she's worked with. It was a long time that I read this book. I just
Hmm.
love that phrase of feel the fear and do it anyway. And I say that to myself now. So if there's something I think, oh, I'm a bit apprehensive, I'm a bit anxious, oh, I don't know, or there's a big meeting that I've got to chair, and there's like 30 people in the room, and they're all very senior academics, and I feel a little bit intimidated. I always think, right, feel the fear, do it anyway. And actually, once you do it, you're fine. You realize it isn't going to harm you. There's nothing, other people can do it, so why can't you? That was one thing that got me over fear. How does that sound? I mean, that feel the
That
fear and
sounds,
do it
I was
anyway.
thinking what you're saying right now. For me to identify with that is I started going to the gym. There are quite a few bits of equipment in the gym I don't know how to use, and I'm quite fearful of them. But I've got a lovely PT, and now
Okay.
I'm feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I've been enjoying it. Or thinking I could jump over a stream or walk, and I'm a bit fearful of that. Can I get across these, step on the rocks? Am I going to fall?
Yeah.
I'm feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So that little bit of adrenaline rush is
So
quite
that's
nice.
interesting, actually, what you've just said. There's something in that that just made me realize something. So you fear the equipment, you fear sort of falling over or something, whereas I would fear, and this is how I'm hearing myself now thinking about this, I would fear in a gym, what are other people going to see? It's like the fear of being out of breath or not being able to do something, or or if I slipped on out on a walk or something, and
Mm.
having somebody watch me fall into the river and make a fool of myself. Well, actually, you're not bothered by that, by the sounds of it.
No, I'm not. Remember what I said? I used to be angsty, acnified, and tubby,
Yeah,
and still I sort of fashioned it out.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I still don't have that. It's
Oh,
yes, and
lovely.
you know something? If you don't have something, it's hard for you to realize when somebody else is experiencing that,
Yeah,
and unless they articulate it to you, and or you're super sensitive,
yeah.
you're not going to pick that up. And that's something you've said to me, and maybe one should I don't know, when somebody else is feeling that. So sometimes they need to warn you. I might
Mm.
be, fearful of that, that sort of thing, because you're not tuned into it. Here, I thought I was a sensitive person, and I'm
Well, you see, I could take things from you. This is learning for me because there's always people I find that don't have that
Mm.
overly worried, and that comes from being younger, where you're trying to fit in and those sort of things, and it's a constant process for me, I think, because people say to me, "But Ranjit, you're so confident, you do all these things," and I think in my
Mm.
head, I think that's because I feel the fear and do it anyway, and I thought,
Mm.
doesn't everyone do that? But then there was another occasion actually of somebody who I met on a cruise ship. So my partner and I were on this cruise ship, and have you been on a cruise, Sundari?
No, I haven't. I'm looking
Right.
forward to my first cruise.
Oh, okay. Well,
I haven't been on one, so it'll be interesting when I do go on one.
oh,
Yes,
lovely.
that's
So
what I
yeah, we could
mean.
we could talk about that one day. We could talk about travel actually, it'd be quite interesting.
Yes, that
So
would be interesting.
so we're on this cruise ship, and cruise ships are often, so this is going back about 10, 12, maybe 15 years. And
Right.
around that time, younger people didn't go on cruise ships. It was old, middle class, and I would say it's almost all white. So the
Right.
only non-white people would not be the guests, it would be the staff. Anyway, so we're on this cruise ship and it was going to the Baltics. I, as you know, did a degree in Russian, so I was excited
Yeah.
to go to Russia. So, but
Showing off your Russian.
yeah,
Yes.
I thought I'd practice when I get there. But we were on the ship, and there was this lady that I kept on seeing a few times. And I noticed her because she was an Asian lady on her own. There was me
She
and my
stood out then. Yes.
yeah, she stood out because I was like, oh, another person like me. And she looked at me, I looked at her. And a couple of times we said hello. Anyway, this one day I was in the restaurant having afternoon tea. My partner went off, who is my husband now, but my partner at the time went off and
Mm,
to get some cakes because I like to have cake in the afternoon. And I was sitting there.
quite right.
Yeah, I was sitting there. The place was empty, but she goes, is this chair free? And I went, yes, it is. So
There are
she
so
sat,
many chairs. Do sit
yeah.
next to me.
So I said, "Yeah, sit down." I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation. And then we started talking. And actually, she was from Birmingham, so
All right.
not far. And she was actually GP as well.
Okay.
She worked as a GP in Birmingham. And I was like, how weird is this? But at first she didn't tell me. We were both very coy about our careers. So I just
All
said,
right.
I do a bit of teaching. She said she works in health. So we didn't
Don't
want to
give it away.
yeah, we didn't want to talk about work too much. And
No.
when she eventually told me, she goes, "Well, I've told people here that I own a corner shop because that's what they expect to hear."
Ah, I see what you mean. Yes,
And she
yes.
goes, so everyone's left me alone.
She
And
didn't want to dispel that
no,
idea
but
they had of her.
yes, but interesting. Cut forward a few days when she did tell them she worked as a GP. Oh, they were all her friend. At first, they weren't bothered, so because she was on a singles table for evening dinner. I was talking about how I felt a little bit strange on the cruise ships. And she was like you. She was like, Ranjit, why are you bothered? You've paid the same money as everyone else. You have the same right as everyone else to be anywhere on this ship. And me being a confident person, I was like, actually, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like, oh, I can't go into that place or I can't do this? And she was, don't let them make you feel like that. She goes, actually, you're making yourself feel like that. She's a little
Yes,
bit
it's
off.
interesting why we're going off on a bit of a tangent,
Yeah,
but that idea of whether, you know, our childhood experiences
yeah,
have sort of formed and stayed with us, and
yeah.
that's why we feel that way.
She was a little
Whereas,
old, she was a little older than me, so she was like telling me off, and I thought, yeah, actually, she's right. So, I mean, we're
mm,
still friends to this day. It was actually quite funny. She knew
oh,
people I
nice.
knew, and it was, talk about, you meet people in these strange places, and you realize
Mm.
you know a lot about each other, but we never met. So when I worked in health, she worked in health in the same area. We never actually met each other, but we were working literally 2 streets away. It was interesting. So that was another person that influenced how I think about fear and being frightened of things.
Yes, and so thank you. You know, it's that sharing of that thing of being frightened. So I was trying to think of being frightened and growing up. I think obviously I was always frightened if I was going to get my exam
Mm.
results.
Mm.
That sort of things frightened me. You know, was I going to live up to the grade? Because there was a lot of expectation. So
Yeah.
those sorts of things made me fearful of grandmother or mother were going to be cross with me because I'd done something.
Weren't those
So
the worst days though?
yeah.
That all that work. I mean, young people having to
Mm,
go through that now,
mm.
constantly. Yeah, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah, so that's part of growing up, I guess.
Yeah.
But I suppose the one thing that, I talk about it to other people now, saying I did leave home when I was
Mm.
17 and came to England. I came to
Okay.
boarding school because there was an expectation we'd come to boarding school, do well in the exams and go on to do, well, medicine. And lots
Mm.
of people say, wow, that's amazing that you left home at 16, 17. I wasn't afraid. I thought it was going to be this wonderful adventure of Mallory Towers and, Enid Blyton and
Yeah.
midnight picnics at boarding school. So I wasn't frightened of that when I should have been, I think. Well, maybe I shouldn't have been, but I just found those sort of exciting things to be doing.
That's really
And
interesting. So, because you went to a
yeah,
boarding school, I mean, I went to a local comprehensive, so very different. So stayed at home,
yes.
went to school. So you were away from your family for how many
I
years?
was away from my family, and I don't know. I think looking back now, I probably did miss them. I wasn't as independent as I thought I was. Looking back, I was probably a little bit sad, but I didn't think of it at the time. It's only looking back
Because you
I
had all
think
the
of that.
excitement of being in a new country, all those friends and
Yes.
people. Okay.
And as I said, I didn't get my grades initially to get into med school. And that was frightening because what would the parents say? But they were very supportive,
Yeah.
they saw me through that and I did get in. But that was, should that period have been a defining moment of growing up? Probably was, but it happened, in a sort of unceremonious way, but
Mm.
in some ways ceremoniously because I didn't notice it. The idea was I came to England. Little did I know I would never go back because I started living my life here. So in many ways, it wasn't planned. If somebody had
Mm.
told me at 17, you're going to go and never come back, I probably would have said, oh, I don't know where I'm going. But
Yeah.
because it's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you just went through it and then you stayed. But at that time, I none of those things were clear to me at the time.
It's
So I started growing up slowly, I suppose, I was very independent. I could find my way
yeah.
around transport, paying bills, everything. But the idea of growing up also in Asian families, I think is, do you ever grow up?
No.
I
I
think,
was just gonna say.
yes, you don't because, always mother and father. But I mean, I'm going to share this with you. I mean, it's a little poignant, obviously. So I think my big moment of growing up was my father died when I was 21, and that
Okay.
was an extreme shock. So for me, that
Mm.
was really difficult.
Mm.
Had to grow up because I was very close to my father, and it took me about 20 years of not crying when I talked about
Mm.
him. So I'm not crying now, but usually talking about my father, you
Yeah.
know, was very painful. So that was having to grow up. And then the idea, my mother died about 12 years ago. I was very grown up by then.
Yeah.
So and suddenly find that actually my father-in-law said this to me when he was in his, 70s. He goes, my mother and father are gone now. I'm an orphan. And that idea that there
Mm.
is no grown up now because they were the grown ups in the room and now you are the grown up. And, having children, you definitely grow up then
Yeah.
because you're in charge. But I always had mummy that I could rely on a little bit to talk to about things.
Yeah.
But when grandmother, father, mother were gone, suddenly I'm grown up. I always think in my household, Simon's the grown up, you see. Eldest in the family. Eldest in the family
Yeah.
always is the grown up.
Yeah.
I'm third in my family, only girl, so used to being mollycoddled and looked
Yeah.
after. So, but I mean, I had periods where were defining moments of growing up, but I'm so
Mm.
pleased in so many other ways. It happened to me in bits and, in periods and phases that I've grown
Mm.
up. But some people have a lot of growing up to do very quickly, and that must be very difficult because they've not been prepared for it.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, there's several things you've said that just made me think of things.
Mhm.
I mean, having to lose your father at 21, I mean, that's very young.
Mm.
Dealing with the loss of a parent, that's a shock, isn't it? I remember
Yes.
my dad died about 13, 14 years ago, and
Mm.
it came out the blue. We thought he would live for a long time, and it was a heart attack.
Mm.
It was very sudden. And that came as a shock. It's that thing of when you lose a parent, you start realizing that you have to grow up. You become the grown up. But I think you're the
Mm.
grown up in other people's eyes. So you've got children, I don't. So your
Mm.
children see you as the grown up, even though you're fun and you're lively. And I bet you don't act like the grown up in front of them all the time. But
No,
I
I
think
don't.
in but I think that's a good thing. But they see you as the grown up, and I think
Yes.
that's the thing. And then when you do have to take on those roles, you
Mm.
become the grown up in that way. So it's interesting. How does it feel to be grown up? Is something you mentioned
Yes,
as
that
well.
that is the thing. Oh, how does it feel to be grown up? Because I must admit, as my career, I've as I said, I've lessened what I'm doing in my career-wise, and now I feel younger again because there's that freedom of being younger, but I still am grown up. So in many ways, I feel it's quite nice still having those feelings and thoughts from when you were younger, but having the ability to be able to see these things through. I do admit when I was young, there was a lot of what was that saying, that book that you read about feeling fear and doing it anyway? I honestly, when I was young, I so had that in me. And then I sort of lost it because I was in the period of being this grown up, having a lot of responsibility. And I feel I'm getting it back again, but perhaps not in total abandonment of any responsibility. It's an interesting phase.
And that's the interesting thing, what you just mentioned. I think in your career, being a medic, responsibility, grown up is being responsible, is being sensible, is not having that fun, is not saying, yeah, let's just do the silly things. And I think, well, and can you still be grown up and still have that sense of childishness, having that fun and frivolity? I don't know. I'm thinking, sometimes
I don't know, it was very hard because I think it was especially hard for me because, as I said, middle child, I grew up with no responsibility. If I told you as a child, I used to lie in bed till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the weekends, my legs up against the wall, reading Enid Blyton, and that was it. Nobody asked me of anything, And then later on, a little more responsible. That's the girl that then became the clinical lead and treating patients. Sometimes you think, where did she come from?
And that's, I think, being responsible.
Can I do both? Yes.
Yeah, like your colleagues, your patients, they'd all expect you to behave and to be a certain way. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like I feel that sometimes. I feel like sometimes actually I want a bit of fun. It's not that I'm not negating the situation. Fun is relevant and in certain contexts. And I think that, we're moving on to something else, but I think this is about being grown up. In the sense of what is being grown up to people in those defining periods you've mentioned, like the loss of a parent, that suddenly makes you grow up, having a job, having commitments, having children, all those sort of things. So I think it's funny, actually, my niece came round yesterday. We were talking about family, and I know your daughters came round to see you, and so my niece came round. I see my niece and nephews as my children as well. So even though we didn't have
extended children,
and we have the fun times with them, so that's great. So now they're all of a certain age. They're like late teens, early 20s. Anyway, she came around yesterday and we were talking about just growing up and things. And I was thinking, God, for her, and I remember people saying this when I was younger, like, oh God, it's so difficult for you now, having to find jobs and careers and paying for a house. And I look back now and I think, actually, it wasn't that bad. But for young people now, I think, how difficult is it going to be for them to grow up?
I don't know. You see, again, Ranjit, the idea is because we've gone through it. Do you think we look back at it through rose-tinted glasses and negate all the bad feelings? Because really, for survival, we have to negate the bad feelings and forget them. Because I'm sure at the time when I was doing my on-call, Friday morning till Monday evening, life possibly felt unbearable, wanting to chuck the bleep into the toilet and drown it. And I'm sure, many stressful periods, but I seem to have got over it. And I don't know whether it's the survival of our minds that has allowed us to do it. And I'm lucky, and you're lucky that you've been able to do it. Whereas there are some people who might struggle with that. And, I hope whoever's listening, if they're struggling, that, they can get some help with it, because not all of us are lucky enough to be equipped with the ability to do that, because that may relate back to childhood personalities, and getting all that sort of care and when you were young to enable you to give us all these tools to deal with these things, really. I feel like we're going on in a very serious.
I know we're getting on to different things, but I think it's that resilience, and I think we talked about this before, haven't we? And I think the one thing for me that's come out of this is, it reminds me, I think people know these things already. I think it's about reminding yourself. So it's been lovely today talking about reminding me of, like, feel the fear and do it anyway, and thinking about that cruise ship experience and all those sort of things, that that feeling the fear in doing it, you become stronger. It's like anything, you talk about the gym. That's how
Yeah.
you become better, by doing those things. At first, it's difficult, it becomes easier. And I think for young people these days, sometimes there is this thing of, I'm going to avoid that because I fear it or I don't want to do it. What we had to do was, looking back, is we did those things because we just had to. Like, you went to a different country, you had to learn those things. Me growing up in an environment that wasn't as welcoming. That sounds awful. It wasn't that bad actually, but it sounds like terrible. But I mean, there are some moments that I look back on. But yeah, you have to learn those things. So they just give you that strength, don't they? So as we come to the end of this episode, I think there's lots of things actually. We're going to have other episodes coming out of this. I can sense it.
No, so initially I thought growing up, if you'd asked me when I was young, what's growing up? That means going to do the food shopping, doing cooking, paying bills. I don't want to grow up, and going to work every day. I don't want that. But turns out that being grown up is other things too. And it's quite nice being a grown up, but also for me, I'm happy to have retained sort of some of my I don't know whether to call it childlike, but carefree. Perhaps carefree is the correct terminology. And I feel lucky to be able to embrace that again. Yes. And Ranjit, you help with all that. Your sort of positivity and the way we discuss things has really helped me. And I'm, really enjoy that. That's when we banter. Yeah,
that's what I find from this as well, is we just talk about everything. So, I mean, our podcast is just us talking about stuff. There's things in this that hopefully will help other people as well.
No, so I guess maybe some people might reflect and think with their friends or their family, think, do you think you're grown up? What does grown up mean to you? That might be quite fun for people to, to reflect on. That might be quite cool. Yeah.
No, that's good. Anyway, we've come to the end. Well, I will speak to you soon.
Yes, we will speak to each other soon. And for more chai and definitely more chat.
Yes, more chat as well.
Chai and chat.